So this is it. These are the places, right? Drum roll, please. These are the places in the UK where somebody who's earning an average salary can buy an average house.
Hello and welcome to the Mapstack podcast, where every week we explore the world of open data visualized as interactive web maps. This week I am joined by Chris and Michael again. Chris, I went to you I went to you first time last time. So Michael, I'll go to you first. How's your week been?
Oh, pretty good. It's been pretty busy. We've got a national championship coming up this weekend, so we've been training at the gym. Had a couple of pretty good leads come in. So it's been busy on all fronts. Yeah, it's been all right. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, good week. Normal. Sitting there working with the developers. We're just adding the last features to Mapstack and what we call a release candidate. That's kind of industry terminology where we're going to ready to do the public release. So it's those last kind of tweaks and bugs. So that's pretty cool. Took my dad out for his birthday last night. Me and my brother went and had a big steak. That was good.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very regular week.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll probably touch on that release a little bit towards the end of the podcast. But this week, I think we've got a really interesting map this week with because normally we do one data set, one map, but this week it's actually a combination of a couple of data sets, so that we can actually start exploring some causality and start comparing things. So, Chris, could you just explain a little bit about the map, which is based on UK income and house prices, I believe?
Yeah. So you guys will probably remember, like 2 episodes ago, we had a map that broke up the UK by what we call like local authorities, which is a statistical area, by median house price. Okay, and we were looking at where are the most expensive houses in the country and where are the cheapest. And then we did the same for the USA the week afterwards. And then I started thinking that map doesn't really paint the whole picture, because in the UK, there's very big income disparities between different areas. So when we're talking about where has the best value housing, just knowing what the price of the house is doesn't tell you that. You need to know what the house property price is like compared to the income. So salaries are higher in London, property prices are higher. So what I did is I went and downloaded the UK weekly take-home, I've forgotten how they worded it, take-home income data for December. And then I joined that in with the map that we had with the property prices. And then using that, I was able to make a ratio. So how many times annual income is the average property price? Now, this ratio is actually really interesting, because here in the UK, a general rule of thumb when you're going to the bank to get a mortgage for your property is that they will lend you up to 4.5 times the value, 4.5 times your annual income. Okay, that's the biggest mortgage you can get. So that's a pretty interesting metric, because what that means is that if the average property price is greater than 4.5 times the average salary, it means the average guy can't buy the average house, or guy or girl, sorry. The other thing that was super interesting with this map is to see whether there's anywhere that the average person can still buy a house as an individual, because almost all mortgage applications now in this country rely on a couple. You need to have both of your salaries coming in.
And what's your partner making?
Yeah. So like 4.5 times your salary combined. I was speaking with Paul, actually. So Paul, another colleague of ours, Australian. And he was saying about how in Australia now, the parents are coming in on the mortgage. Okay, so your retired parents, you can't get, the multiple of you and your partner's salary is not enough to secure the mortgage. So they're having to bring the parents in to like co-sign on the mortgage, which is pretty scary.
Wow, that's, yeah, I hadn't heard of that before.
You got to ask mom and dad's permission.
Yeah.
Before you get a house. It's like, I'm 35 years old, I still got to ask my mom if I can buy a house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if she wants you out of the basement, that's what's got to happen. You got to say, Mom.
Get out here and co-sign, Mom.
Okay, cool. Well, I suppose let's start I think everyone watching this should probably need something to benchmark as we progress through this. So I've actually pulled some stats from November of last year. And in terms of median UK income across the country, it's £27,756. But that includes both part-time and full-time. So that's so in terms of the full time, it's £33,000 there or thereabouts. So in terms of as we progress through this map, just something to bear in mind, just to benchmark it. So I think with that stated, I think let's do a quick overview of perhaps the highest and lowest incomes. We'll start with the incomes, and then we could probably go through to the ratio. So yeah, if you could.
Yeah, so if we're looking on the map here, so the first thing, the reason we map anything is to try and look at those kind of visual patterns. What are the details and features that would be hidden if we were just looking at this in a spreadsheet? So people who know nothing about the UK whatsoever are going to be able to look at this map and go, okay, right, I can see a clear pattern here. The highest ratio of income to property price is down here in the southeast of England, surrounding London. To anyone that's here in the UK, that's not a surprise. The counties, so you've got London, you see this is the M25. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see this motorway. So this is a ring that surrounds London. London's a kind of a huge sprawling city. Anything inside there is generally London, and then surrounding it, you've got the home counties. So these are the counties.
The commuter belt, right?
Yeah, the commuter belt. So a lot of people that don't want to live in the big city but work in the big city buy in this commuter belt. So that's always had expensive property. But what we can see is that knock-on effect from London is now stretching far and wide. It's like a 100-mile ring around London now with these high property ratios. And if we click on some of these, just to give you, we've got here, so we can see that the range. Property price to average income ratio goes up to like a multiple of 27.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, Chris. So is this like the bottom of where it's like beige? Is that like 1 to 3 to 1 to 7 in terms of like?
So the lowest ones are in the
okay.
beige.
So the worst is like 1 to 27, right? Like that's steep.
Yeah, so if we hit some of these beige ones down here in South Wales, for example, 6.7, 6.5, and then we hit some of these dark purple ones here in London, 23.3.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Yeah, they can go up very high. So there's so that's the pattern there, and then you can also see a story within London as well. So there are some areas in London where the ratio is still, I would say, insane. Now, I remember telling the story. The reason this ratio was interesting to me, because I was thinking, how's that ratio changed over time? Okay. You might remember in the original podcast where we were looking at property prices, I told the story about how I went to the town where my mum grew up, which is in the southeast of England. And we were sort of doing a trip down memory lane, driving around, the houses we lived in, the schools I went to and things like this. And we went and saw the first house that my mum bought with my dad. So they bought this first house together in Sudbury. It was a detached bungalow, 3 bedrooms. She told me, I think they paid £15,000 for it. This was sometime in the 80s, which seems cheap now, but I think at the time. But I in my head, I was wondering, what's that compared to your income? So my mum did some maths, and she thought that price was at that time was about 2 times their annual income combined. Okay, so it was about 4 times an individual's income. So we can see how things have changed over time. That town where I was from is Sudbury, which is here. So we can click on here and we can see how things have changed. So when my mum bought her first house, the ratio there was between 3 and 4 is what we worked it out to. Now it's 15. So this isn't just the house price isn't just a case of inflation where things are costing more because of inflation and salaries are keeping with it. These two things are moving apart. And that ratio of 15 is kind of interesting, because if you think, what does that mean in real terms? Like, what that means is, to buy that house now, imagine you could lock in all of the prices now so they didn't creep up going forward. If you could lock in all of the prices now, to buy that house in Sudbury now, you would need to save every single penny of your salary. So no food, no nothing. If you saved every single penny of your salary, it would take you 15 years to buy the average house with the
But more
average
realistically,
salary.
it's going to take you, what, 35, 40? Basically
Exactly.
a lifetime. Yeah,
Yeah.
to pay the mortgage.
Yeah. And this is an interesting conversation, because I think a lot of of people I see. I'm not an expert in any of these subjects, but I see that a lot of people in my office, for example, seem to have bought in this high period during COVID, kind of at the top of the market, and they still keep saying, "Oh, but the prices will go up." And I'm kind of like, I'm thinking, where can they really go from here? Where can the property prices really go from here? People can't live 2 lifetimes.
Mm.
The price can't get any higher because people just can't pay for it. The other interesting thing here in the UK, it's probably the same in the States. A lot of the boomer generation, which is one of the biggest generation in this country, they all own their properties outright now. Some of them have got one or two. So the interesting question is going to be what happens to property prices, because the boomer generation now are all hitting their 70s. Okay, so that generation is going to start shrinking over the next 10 years. That's life. That's just what happens. And it'd be interesting to see what happens to property prices when the properties that the boomer generation become part of their estate and get sold. And here in the UK, you don't get to pass everything down to your kids. You basically get cut in half by inheritance tax. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot going on, but my non-expert prediction is that inflation-adjusted property prices have topped out. I just can't see how you can't get blood out of a stone, in my opinion.
I wonder if there's any calculations of by which you could work out the gap between income and house prices, what that max is, because once it goes past a certain threshold, like you say, it can't really go much further.
Well, I think. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I don't think it's as bad in the UK or the US as it is somewhere like China. If I'm not mistaken, I read some statistics recently where I think China specifically, the cost of buying a house, especially in any of the more developed cities, is like, I don't even know what it is, but you're in debt for life, basically, was the sort of the sentiment behind it. And I think when they compared that to the U.S., when they compared the U.S. to several Asian countries, the price of owning a home was many, many times greater than it was to do so in the U.S. I think in the U.S. it's 11 on national average, if I'm not mistaken, or it may have been a couple of years ago, around 11. But still, that puts you at paying your mortgage basically your whole life, either way. So
I think one of the interesting things with Asia, we've all lived in Asia, haven't we? So we've got like first-hand experience with this. Is in Asia, everybody's comfortable living in multi-generational households. It's very common to have aunties and uncles and grandparents all within one house. So sometimes you can split that cost amongst a larger pool. Whilst in the West, we've been used to the idea of a nuclear family now, haven't we, for generations? And where it's just husband and wife, hopefully kids. That's it. Once the kids get to a certain age, they fly the nest and they move on. And I think that's kind of a one-way street, I imagine. I actually liked, when I was living in Asia, I had a multi-generational setup for a while. Like, my wife's.
It's nice, yeah.
My wife's mother-in-law was living with us, and then for a period, my dad came over from the UK, and he was living with us for about 6 years as well. So we had that. We had the kids. We had me and Aya. We had my mother-in-law and my wife's father-in-law, which is kind of strange, all in the same place. And it was actually a really cool setup. But I'm not sure whether everybody's could go back to that kind of setup. When we first started living like that, my mother-in-law moved in for us when my son was first born. My wife said, this is how it works here. Mum's going to come and live with us, help out when the baby's first born. And I had these kind of like UK ideas. I was going, mother-in-law living in our house, what a nightmare. It sounds awful. And I was kind of, I'll go with it. I'll be easy. And then my mother-in-law moved in, and it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. She helped out so much. She was great with Alex when he was born. It gave us a little bit of freedom so we could go out occasionally, because it wasn't like putting a baby with a babysitter, because Mac Ye, is what my grandkids called her, was there, and they knew her so well. We could just leave her with grandma.
You don't have to worry about finding a new babysitter versus can I trust this person I've just met? It's like it's your mom, it's your mother. You can trust her, right?
Yeah, being able to just go out for dinner sometimes during that period. Yeah, I think it took a lot of stress off. Anyway, after about like 6-7 months, my wife said, I think we're good now. I'm gonna say to my mum to she can go back. And I was like, no. I've gone full circle.
Wait,
Like, no. She can stay here longer. Anyway, in the end, she didn't leave. She was with us, for years until unfortunately she passed a couple of years ago. But that was great. But I don't think I'm going to be able to sell the multi-generational idea here in the UK.
No.
I think there's a cultural issue. Like I know this is a broad stroke when you talk about these things, but having lived in two different cultures for so long and being so ingrained in it, what I see between the Asian culture and Western culture is in Asian culture there's kind of a baton change, like in a relay race with the generations. And what I mean by that is, the parents are in charge. That's how it works. You grow up, your parents are in charge, they're above you, they make the decisions. And in Western culture, that never really changes. They're always, your parents are still going to be in that position where they're advising you and telling you what to do as you get older. But in Asian culture, especially Cambodia, there seems to be like a baton change. Once you've had kids and you're in the household, it's like my mother-in-law kind of said, "Oh, you guys are in charge now. You make the decisions." She'd voice her opinions. She'd stick some ideas in sometimes. But there was kind of a baton change. So you didn't have that uncomfortable. There wasn't any tension there, which is always. What I would have thought if I was in this country, mother-in-law was going to come live with us. I thought I'd be thinking, oh no, she's going to be in our business all the time.
Her demands, yeah.
Yeah. And then the best thing about my mother-in-law is every time me and my wife had a little argument or something, she used to side with me a lot.
Yeah. Yes, I get the same deal. Wife. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because in Western, you think if mother-in-law moves in, they're going to gang up on me. They're going to gang up on me. I'll be in trouble. But yeah, it didn't work that way. Anyway. Side note, so maybe that's where we're heading in the UK, multi-generational households, if we want to afford it. Because, like I said, here in the UK, the general yardstick they use when you're applying for a mortgage is 4.5 times household income. Okay, so I was doing an interesting query on the map. I'll share it with you after I made this map. So I was thinking, where in the UK is the median property price 4.5 times the median salary, the average income or less? So in other words, where are the places in the UK where a single individual earning an average salary can buy the average house? You follow? It's a bit of a mouthful.
The North.
All right, so let's property price to income ratio is greater than or equal to 4.5. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong way, didn't I? That's everywhere. That's not the truth. It should be less than or equal to 4.5.
Yeah, there you go.
I was like,
yeah,
wow.
So we'll get the inverse of that then.
1.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah. Oh no.
We've got one place in the entire UK. We're not even north of the border there. This is still England, and it is Copeland, where the average property price is 153,000, and then the median annual income is 42,000. Now that's quite a high median income there. If I switch to the median income map, just see that coloured in. So let me clear the filter a second. So I'm not sure what's going on in Copeland there and why the salaries are high. Is there oil there? Maybe somebody in the comments can explain it below, because the property prices are really reasonable. Let's bring up our friend Google Maps and see if we can get any answers.
What do you call it? So it's Copeland?
Yeah, it's Copeland. So there's Copeland. Let's get some satellite imagery on. There's not a lot going on here. This looks like very rural, but the median salaries are high. That looks, what is that? That's a nuclear power plant.
Oh,
right. Okay. Sellafield. Right. Okay. So we've got an answer.
It had to be some type of industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's probably happening is high salaries in the nuclear power plant, and the property prices around it just aren't keeping up with it, I would imagine. Okay, that's a huge site.
Sellafield. These nuclear physicists don't mind living in a modest house, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It's a train station. That's how you get to work. But yeah, I'm not sure where they live, because it looks very rural. I think I think that's probably not a mistake, is it? If you're going to put up a nuclear power plant, you probably don't want to put it in the middle of London.
Yeah.
I suppose the overall point of this is that's very singular, right? It's a rare case. It's
an
somewhat
outlier.
unique. It's an outlier, right? So it's not
So what's the
actually
next-
representative at all.
Well, I just want to
What's
point
the next
something out
step
that's funny here. Can you guys read that? That's an
What is it?
unfortunate. That's an unfortunate name for a lake near a nuclear power plant.
Does
can't
it say
see it. Can you
wastewater?
zoom in?
It's missing an E, but it looks almost like
Wasp water?
wastewater. Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't go swimming in there.
No.
Okay, right. Yeah, so that's Copeland. So Copeland's this one outlier.
Looks like you got one more purple spot. You got one more purple spot there somewhere in London, but that's probably another.
Oh, there's lots of purple spots. That's just the high salary.
Oh,
The
okay.
ratio though is low. So there's only one place in the UK where, as a single average earner, you can buy the average property. So for that, you've got to go and work in what was the name of the power plant there? Sizewell,
Sellafield, wasn't it?
Sellafield. You've got to go and work in Sellafield nuclear power plant. Okay, like Homer Simpson. Right.
Was that your Springfield?
Yeah. Well, this is interesting actually because I saw a meme. I saw a meme on Twitter the other day, and they said, and it had a picture of the Simpsons house, you know, because it's a nice looks like a 4-bedroom detached house, driveway,
Right.
2 cars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
somebody
it's a
said,
$300,000 home probably
yeah,
today.
and somebody in the meme had said, this is the type of house that somebody on a single salary household could afford in the 90s.
Right. No, it's true.
But now we know the secret sauce. The secret sauce is Homer worked in a nuclear power plant.
Right.
And that tends to bring the local house price
You get
down
the-
because
yeah,
most
and you
people
get the
don't want to live
hazard
next to
pay.
a nuclear power plant.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just farmland. So what's the next step up if that one's at 4.5?
Yeah, well,
What's,
maybe let's
What
say
about 9? Go for 9, say for like a couple would have to buy, right? So that
Well,
would
Yeah.
before we do that, how about we just go to a little bit above 4.5? What are the places where you just miss it? You know, so maybe you could save a deposit. You could save up a deposit of say 100K that brings the size of the mortgage down a bit, and then you could get it. So let's
like 5 or 6 or something.
yeah, let's put the number out to 5 and see if we catch any more. Less than or equal to 5. All right. Okay, so you do that. We've got a couple more places now. So these are the kind of places where,
Scotland.
yeah. So these are around Glasgow, North Lanarkshire, 28,000. Michael, I've got a question.
What's up?
This is just an interesting thing. This is I just want to do a test because I noticed something really interesting the other day.
Lanarkshire.
Shire, yeah.
Shire.
So Americans, yeah.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. So it's kind of interesting we find here in the UK when Americans say place names, anything that has SHIR in the end, they all say Shire. They say Shire.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings. But here in the
Right,
UK, we
yeah.
don't say that. We would say Lanarkshire, Nottinghamshire, Gloucestershire.
Okay.
So I was kind of wondering, okay, it's an easy mistake to make. It's Lord of the Rings. But then I thought, and I've got a friend here, Derek, in my office, good friend of mine, American from Colorado, and he was using Shire all the time. So I got to listening to the little mistakes that get made. But then I realized the other day, you've got a state in the US that has the same ending on it, New Hampshire. New Hampshire. So I was thinking, you guys have a state of your own that ends in the same thing, and you say Shire, New Hampshire.
You're right. Yes.
But then whenever you
Yes.
do UK ones, you say Shire.
Right. Because those are foreign and ours isn't.
Yeah,
And
I think it's what it
I
is.
actually couldn't even imagine. I was like, is there one that's Shire? Until you just mentioned it, it's like I had no. That wasn't even on my radar. But yeah. And we got
New Hampshire.
Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah, Worcestershire sauce. Yeah, not
We
Worcestershire.
say that the right way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We say
Anyway,
that's kind of
that
across the board. So
That freaked me out more. I never used to think of it anything, but when people from the US said Shire, I didn't think anything. I thought, yeah, that's the obvious way to sell it. English is a bit stupid sometimes. If I was going to spell that out phonetically, that's how I'd say it. Makes sense. But then I thought New
Right.
Hampshire. All right, so we got a few places around Scotland where, as an individual, if you saved up a bit of a deposit, so let's say the average property price here is 138,000. 4 times 28, let's say that's roughly 120,000. So if you got together like a 20K deposit, you could still get a mortgage and buy a house. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, up in Scotland, let's just push it out one more. Let's go to 6 and see what we get. Okay, so so this brings us a bit into England now. We've got some places around Newcastle.
What's down there on the furthest south? Looks like you got something
This
you got one
Stoke-on-Trent.
even further. You got one even further south. I think you got one more.
Down in
That's
Wales.
South Wales.
Yeah, you're almost in town there, right?
Yeah, this is actually a beautiful part of the world. So the Brecon Beacons, very nice part of the world. But a lot of South Wales here. My brother's got a house around here, so I spend quite a lot of time trekking and things. But the story around there is there are lots and lots of towns up in the hills. These were big mining communities. So South Wales was really big for mining. So I think what happened is once coal mining ended in this country, there were probably more houses than there were industry to support those houses. Incomes went way down, but absolutely beautiful part of the world in South Wales there. I love it.
But you still can't afford it as an individual on an average income?
Yeah, still can't afford it as an individual. So 145,000 pounds there, median income, £25,000. Yeah, so four and a half, you probably get 112. Yeah, you'd have to put in about £30,000 deposit as an individual. Hard life. So then what we were talking about, what was your suggestion, Lawrence, was let's double it.
Look at a couple. Double it so we can see, okay, well, if you're a couple and you're earning the average income, like where could you buy a house?
Okay, all right. So let's do that. So let's presume we have a couple. They both earn the same salary. They both get the average salary.
Well, there's the income gap that you have to keep in mind too, right?
Oh yeah, the gender pay gap.
That's it. It's there.
Yeah,
but yeah, let's see.
I don't get into that. That's a hot potato. There's a hot potato.
What was the baseline we were looking at earlier? It was like 3 or 4 or 4.5 or something.
4.5. So 4.5. So if we say 9.
9, yeah.
Yeah, let's go 9, and let's see where, as a couple earning an average salary in the UK, where can you buy your house? Okay, so all right, so there we've got
overrepresented.
Sorry, Lawrence, I missed that.
Scotland is really looking like the place to be, right?
Right.
Yeah. Scotland's the place to be, with the exception of Edinburgh. It's kind of what you'd expect.
I'm not familiar with Scotland. Is that the what's the bigger towns or cities like the
Glasgow's the biggest city, but the posh Scots, good friend of ours actually, Chris Gow, old Etonian, posh Scot. They're usually from Edinburgh. Don't like to, just generally. Yeah, Edinburgh's a beautiful place. I've never had the chance to go since we moved back to the UK. I've been meaning to get up there in summer. I don't want to go there in winter because I think everybody says it's pretty bleak. But yeah, get up there in the summer. Fringe Festival, love to see that as well. The average house price in Edinburgh is like 334,000. Yeah, so Scotland generally more affordable. North of England, also not so bad. But this is one of those maps that really tells you what the importance of maps is when we're doing any kind of statistical analysis or we're looking at any kind of data, because the story that we're looking at here, this visualization, you could look at a spreadsheet until you're blue in the face. You wouldn't see these patterns. You wouldn't be able to identify these patterns unless you were looking at them. The Scotland one you might be able to pick, but would you be able to pick this one, this strange one where there's a line that moves from kind of Liverpool across to Hull, like this pocket in here, of more affordable housing, another pocket in more North Wales, another pocket in South Wales. So you can see these kind of patterns and combinations. And what you can also see is there's nothing in the south of England. So this is Wales. So the south of England, I'm not sure where the south, for me, I always put the sort of like line at Birmingham. Londoners put the line somewhere like there at the top of the M25, I think.
Well, this would be very helpful for someone like me, like if I was going to move to England or the UK, and I had never, let's say I'd been there a couple times, but not really enough to know what the most affordable parts are. If I had just done like a tourist trip there before, and I was like, now I'm going to move there, where can I actually afford to live? Work a local job. That would be something that would appeal to me. Being able to do that with, whatever country I was, had in mind.
Well, the story here is stay away from the south of England.
Sure.
The ratios are
Now, where are you
Yeah.
again, Chris? Where are you on this map right now?
I'm in Bristol. I'm here.
I forget which. That's under. That's below the. That's on the bottom little jut,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
And
the
that's where
ratio
we are.
here is 12. So not good.
No, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's around. We could probably look at one like this for the U.S. later, but I think that's probably around the national average for the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. I mean,
I suppose so 12 isn't too bad as well, because if you're earning a little bit, if you're both earning like a little bit more than average, then you'd have to save a bigger deposit. So it's somewhat achievable, but still, it's not great, right?
Right. Let me get my calculator out. Let's do some maths. Let's do some maths for Bristol here, or math. So 365,000 is the average price. So let's see. So we've got 29.9 is the median salary. Let's say there's two of us. So we've got a couple. Let's times that by 2. So we're at 59. And then let's times that by 4.5. So 269,100. And let's say the 365. So the median property price is 365,658. And then let's subtract what we can get in a mortgage. So yeah, so here in Bristol, the average couple to buy the average house is going to need to save up basically £100,000 deposit in order to make that happen, which is pretty tough. I saw a really interesting news article recently, and they were talking about something happened in the last census that was really interesting. That for the first time ever, the average age of a new mother was above 30. So they showed this graph, and the graph.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, the graph was insane because it was so linear. It went from like kind of the 60s, and the average age of a mother was like 19 or something, and it's just this straight line, just going straight up to 30. And what they said is that was interesting is part of that you would think is career based. So far more women are in the workforce compared to the 60s. Career driven, don't want to have any gaps in the career. But what they said is when they actually interviewed people about the reasons for it, that wasn't the reason that was coming across. The reason is they didn't feel that they were in a position of enough security in order to have children.
You don't want to have kids if you're still renting an apartment at the top floor of such. You want to.
Exactly.
Most people, I think, they want to be well into paying on a mortgage already before they even have kids.
Exactly.
Generally,
exactly.
Especially in the U.S. is the same.
Yeah. So I think the women career-related option, that's kind of an easy answer, but it was just really interesting when they were just asking people randomly on the street, and the answers they were coming back with is I don't really want to have children until I feel more financially secure, and to do that I want to own my own house, and so that is something that's going to become a political issue, I think, because we have an aging population here in the UK. Most of the Western world does. And it's going to need the younger taxpayers are going to have to generate the tax today that are paying for the expenses of, retired people who, have much larger healthcare requirements, housing requirements. So, we need to be able to support those. So if we're having fewer children, and the children that we are having are being born later and later, the kind of demographics are a bit out of whack, getting out of whack, I think. Yeah.
I think there's a common story across, say, the more developed world. I think Germany, all across Europe. I think the States is pretty good, but the UK, that sort of demographic profile is starting to shift, where you've got an aging population that is bigger than the generation below it.
Yeah, they talk about a lot of the guys are talking about like the how it used to be this. Your age demographics,
now it's gone
and now it's like that. Yeah.
So a lot of the Western countries, I remember when I sort of studied a bit about statistics, and those graphs for ages are always like, here are all the different age groups, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, male and female across a line. So when you look at most developing countries, that graph looks like a pyramid. You have lots and lots of young people, very few old people, and those countries have a big demographic boom off the back of that, because once all those young people are productive and they're in work, you have these big booms that the kind of things we've seen in China and we've seen in Southeast Asia. And then you move into like the kind of the boomer phase, where most of Europe has been for a while, where they use the analogy of a bird swallowing a plate. the fat bit is in the middle. So we had this big generation after World War II, lots of births, and then after that it decreased. So then you have like a diamond shape, and now we're moving into the next phase for a lot of countries where it's the inverse pyramid. So yeah, we don't know how that goes. I think the canary down the mine for that is actually Japan. I think Japan is the furthest along that
Yeah,
along that
actually,
process.
I was going to ask today on the cast. I'd like to take a look at some of these property maps for property prices for Japan one day, because I've been hearing a lot of, hearsay and podcasters and YouTube videos and stuff about free houses in Japan because of the population collapse, supposedly.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and is that true? Like, can you go buy a house right now in Japan for $500? Is that
I
a
don't
real
know about the
thing?
house prices, but the population collapse is real, and it's really weird how little it's talked about actually, because it's something that forward population is something that you can predict extremely accurately, because you know what your current population is, and you know what your birth rate is, and you know which direction each of those numbers are traveling. You know, are they in decline? And they're not numbers that tend to shift a lot from year to year. And some of the birth rates, South Korea, I looked at South Korea. So maintenance, to maintain your birth rate, I think is 2.1. So just to maintain your current population, you need,
Right.
2.1 births per couple, basically. And the 0.1 is I suppose, is to pick up for any, infant mortality and things like this. But South Korea was the one that...
What are they at, like 0.8 or something? I know Japan's under less than 1, right? Yeah, 0.8.
0.8, yeah.
Nailed it. Nailed it. I
You
know
did,
my
bang.
birth rates. I know my birth rates, man.
Yeah, you got your birth rate data down. Yeah, so they're... and then I saw a chart that was extrapolating those numbers, because you think, so they need to be at 2.1 and they're at 0.8. And what happens with these kind of numbers is that the growth or decline is exponential. So if you're much above 2.1, it's it's an exponential curve, and then the same way on the way down. So somewhere like South Korea is going to have a real collapse. So Japan, let's see where Japan's at. 1.34.
1.3 was the one that was high, a little bit higher than Korea. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
South
I
Korea's is the
think
worst.
I think China as well is
China as well,
yeah,
1.28.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
China,
they're
And
set
of
for a
course,
declining population
well, and of
relatively
course,
soon.
that's what they're reporting. So you can assume the problem's 30% worse than whatever those numbers, whatever
UK's
it
low,
shows on.
1.6. So yeah, when you ask people, like I sort of was having this discussion in the office the other day, everybody's perception is that the population's booming, but that's not actually the case. And it's not the case globally either. So what tends to happen, my understanding is you have like say we had a boomer generation in the UK. So post-war, people had lots of children. Now, what will happen is they'll maintain at that rate for a little while, even if the birth rate goes back down to 2. So if you had a big birth rate where it was at 4 or something for a while, once those people get to child-rearing age, just by having 2, they increase the overall size of the population. Do you see what I mean? Because they've had 2 as well, and it creates that boom. But slowly, that on that graph, it turns into a diamond. So almost all countries in the world are at 2 below. I think it's only some places in sub-Saharan Africa that are still where the
I
birth
think
rate.
Nigeria is set for the biggest. It
India?
has one of the fastest. India as well, but I think Nigeria
India's still
will be the
pretty.
fastest. There'll be like 1 billion people there.
I think pretty soon India's
Within the
going to
next
overtake
20.
China as the largest population
Yeah, I think that's coming.
in general.
yeah.
I think that's a couple years off.
Yeah, I think their birth rate. But if you look at this is what's interesting with the developing world.
Not that
Everyone
high.
Yeah, it's at maintenance at the moment, so it's sustainable. An interesting one is a country we're all very familiar with is Cambodia. So when I first went to Cambodia in say 2002, the thing that struck me is there were just kids everywhere. Everyone was having children. Like they were having their baby boom period. It was post-war. Everyone felt secure, and I just remember it. It's like there were just children everywhere, and very few old people. But if you look at Cambodia now, how that rate has come down. So when I first went to Cambodia, we're kind of up here in the 2000s. It was like at 4, 2.38, and you can see that they're going to be at 2 replacement Yeah, real soon. So it's going to be interesting times for global population. The interesting thing with these developing countries is, do they stop at 2? We can see which way they're trending. Will they stop at 2 and get to maintenance, or will they follow the same pattern that developed countries in the West, plus sort of Japan and Korea have followed, where they just go straight past that line and just keep going down? Interesting. It'll be interesting to find out.
So we need to have some global data. We gotta get some maps where we can look at this. All like where are the hotspots globally? Like, is it what that would be an interesting one is birth rates.
Yeah.
If you had like worldwide birth rates, or even if it was close to accurate, if we had some relatively recent, see.
Yeah, maybe that could be a map we do in future, looking at maybe some population trends or birth rates, just to see how that's going to look.
I saw a really interesting TED talk a couple of years ago, because everybody knows the global population is going to increase, because all of these developing countries that had their kind of baby boomer moment in the last say 20 years, their populations are still going to increase because each of those kids are going to get older and they're going to have 2 children, say. So the population will increase, but it's one of those things that you can actually be modeled quite accurately. So we know that the population is going to increase to a certain level, but the thing that's not being talked about is after that, there's actually going to be a population decrease, and it's going to happen quite rapidly. Yeah, so it'd be very interesting to map that. Maybe we'll do that for another podcast. I'm not an expert in it by any means. This is just what I've seen from other sources. So I'd love to see the data for myself. That's a big thing about what Mapstack and open data is really about, is that you don't have to take the word of other people about this information and this data. You can actually jump into the data yourself, and you can come up with your own answers. Okay, so let's flip this map around. We've looked at the places that are most affordable in the UK, income ratio wise. Let's flip it around the other way. Let's have a quick look at this, because we know.
What's the 27? What was the other side of it? Yeah.
There are some big ones there. Let's flip it around the other way. Let's say property price is greater than, let's just say greater than 20. Where are the places where the average person would have to save every penny for 20 years? All right. Okay, so there are some, there are some surprises there. So not in central London, which is quite strange. I think we've got a bug with the map here. Look at this. Yeah. Property price average to income ratio 42 in Kensington, but it's not being tagged. 19.
Yeah, mine says 43 on my map.
23, 21. Ooh. We are on staging, everybody. This is just a beta here. So it looks like the devs have pushed something that's where there's a bug here. And you can also see the top end of the range here for the legend is also off. Okay, so we have a problem here. Okay. So let me go back. Let's make sure I've done the filter correctly. Property price to average income ratio is greater than 20. I should have those. Let's look at those results. Look at them in the table. Just see if they're. Yeah. Okay, I didn't look at the data. The one thing I think might have happened is maybe the data set I had, those were for the nerds. Maybe these areas here were put in as strings, not as numbers. So they haven't been included. I'll have a look at that after the show. But yeah, as we can see, there are some, as we would expect, the places with the highest ratio are in the area around London, and we've also got a pocket here in the southwest. This is the Cotswolds. I'm not too far from here, so this is a place. You were talking about the Shires, Michael. Your idea of the Lord of the Rings and the Shires. If you want somewhere that looks like that, that's the spot. Okay, so that's similar to when we looked at the American map the other day. Aspen, the cost was really high, in Nantucket Island.
Right.
Same deal here for the UK. This is a really beautiful place.
That makes sense.
But you would need 20 times the average income in order to get a house there.
Yeah, 20 times. Yeah, what do we get there? 20 times the average income.
Are there actual hobbits there, or it just looks like the Shire?
There better be for 20 times my income.
What? Yeah, I was gonna say what. What makes it worth that much to live there? Or is it that just there's a lot of people there that don't have high incomes? Maybe there's a lot of like labor force there or something.
I think what's going on is this is second homes that's causing this. Okay, so what's happening here is the people that live full time in the Cotswolds are not the people that are buying these properties. The people that are buying these properties are going to be your kind of stockbrokers from London, and this is their weekend. This is where they go for their weekenders, their weekend
Or their
job.
Airbnb.
Or their Airbnb. So that's what's
Right.
pushing up the price. Yeah, the actual area is there's not it's not very populated. There's no big towns in this area. Cirencesters are half decent size, but yeah, that's going to be pushed up by outsiders. The same down here in South Devon. This is another popular holiday spot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Okay, so let's say I find myself in England and I want to just go to the beach for a weekend. Where's the sand? Where's the sandiest beach you got that like looks like what we working with? It's got to be down there, right?
Down here, Cornwall.
Yeah,
Cornwall.
Devon.
If the weather's right, I went there for a week in the summer this year and last year, since we moved back.
Did you get in the water?
If you catch the weather right, so what you need to do is be flexible. Don't book your holiday a year ahead. In the UK, you don't know when that hot week's going to come.
Right.
So what we did both years is once that hot week drops, and we've had a couple of good ones in the last 2 years, where we're up in like 30 degrees, 30 something Celsius. I think that's like 100 Fahrenheit. Hot. Good weather.
Oh yeah.
We just jumped in the car. We're in Bristol, so it's not too far. It's like 2-3 hours get down here. Got down to Cornwall, and it is, when you catch it on the right day, there's nowhere in the world, I would argue. But the right day only comes about like 4 days a year. So
I think I remember when you went there. I think you posted it in Slack or on Facebook or something.
Yeah, it is.
I remember you guys went down there.
Stunning.
It's a proper beach. Okay, yeah, that looks nice.
But this is not what it looks like for about 360 days of 365 days a year.
You just type in overcast. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not even any of those are doing it justice. They all still make it look beautiful. Yeah. This is what you're dealing with most of the time. that's like
what a great day at the beach.
Yeah, that's a UK beach holiday. That's what it looks like. But if you get those 5 days a year where the weather's good, nothing beats it.
Splendid. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's go into more general news now. I think it'd be really good to explain about because we've been talking about the release upcoming. I think we can probably start with the fact that it was pushed back a little, but then other news about that, Chris, would be cool.
Yeah, pushed back more than a little. So you guys who are tuned in, who follow us on Twitter, will know that we were at FOSS4G in the summer, and at FOSS4G, I said we're about to release imminently. So I'm gonna share with you guys like two schools of to do with tech startups and technology like this. A school of thought that's very popular is an idea that they call minimum viable product. So what they say is you shouldn't wait until everything's perfect. You should wait until you have the simplest thing that could possibly work and then release it, knowing that it's incomplete and it's missing lots of things and it has lots of bugs and quirks and everything like that. And the idea is that you will get information back about your system from real users earlier, and that will stop you going down dead ends and steer you in the correct direction. So that's the conventional wisdom about doing releases, and that's what we were planning on doing in the beginning. But there's a second school of thought that says MRP, which stands for minimum remarkable product, which means what's the minimum product you can possibly build where somebody will look at it and go, this is something new. This is a bit different. This is different to what already exists. Now, I decided after the summer that we were going to switch from going MVP to MRP. Now, I think the reason that we could get away with this, if I was building a map product, a web map product for the very first time, there would be lots of holes in my knowledge about what needs to be there and what we need. But because this isn't our first rodeo like this, we already have an existing product that's been used to publish 100,000 web maps. We kind of know what's needed. We have a lot of knowledge about that. So we can kind of fill in those gaps and know what we need in that first MRP. So that's what we did. We made that switch from we were going to push out something that was really, really raw and really rough around the edges in August. Instead, I decided, let's push that back. Let's go MRP. Let's release in the new year with something that's polished, has a more complete feature set, and is something that hopefully when you guys see it for the first time, use it for the first time, you go, okay, this is something new. I see where you're going with this. The MVP that we were going to launch was literally just a map. We were the only ones who could create maps. That's how raw it was. You guys wouldn't have been able to create a map. But then you might have the question, is this just another web mapping tool? There are other web mapping tools. We already know them, Mango, like what we have, or ArcGIS Online, or Carto, and these things. How's this different? And what I wanted to do is I wanted our first release to make it clear what the difference is, clear that this is not a publication platform, it's a content platform in the same vein as YouTube or GitHub. So the idea is not for individuals to make some maps here and just share them within their circle. The idea is for this to be a central global repository for all of the world's maps and data. So this will be the first stop. If you want to find any data about anything, you're not going to be trawling open data portals all over the internet anymore. I'm going to go to Mapstack. The same way, if I want an open source library to do anything, I go to GitHub. I just go straight there. That's where I'm going to look. That's where everything is. And yeah, that's what Mapstack's going to be. It's going to be kind of the YouTube or GitHub of mapping. And I think part of that, you can see it. We're going to have some weird maps in here. This is a staging server I'm showing you guys here. So our devs are just testing on this server all the time. The code's being pushed all the time. So might have some weird stuff. But the homepage of Mapstack, when you look at it, is going to feel a lot more like YouTube than it is for Mango or something like that. So this is what the homepage is going to look like. The homepage is going to be lots of maps. The maps are from many different authors and many different creators. And I could say, right, I want to find the maps that are near me, or I want to look at popular maps, or I'm searching for a particular map, like UK property price maps, and then come in here and I get these maps and I can find, here's the map that we were looking at today, UK location data. So that's what I want. I want this to be a global library of all the world's open data already mapped. Because the other problem that we have, the other problem we're trying to solve, and we know very clearly from Mango, is for people that aren't familiar with mapping and are outside of GIS, the process of finding the raw data on open data portals, like data.gov here in the UK, taking that data, preparing it, and then turning that into a map is a hard process. And most people who are not familiar with mapping can't do it. In my other videos, you guys have seen me preparing data and uploading it into Mapstack on some of my live streams. So you get to see how involved that process is, and how for most people that's it's too big a challenge. And a lot of people aren't willing to spend days preparing a data set. They're just like, I've got an idea. There's something that I'd like to know, a bit like Wikipedia. I just want to go and search for it, find it, get the information I need, and leave. Okay, that's what I'm after. Okay, so any questions?
Yeah, when's the private beta? So when does the private beta go out?
We're on the final stages of putting together what we call a release candidate. So a release candidate we're last few tweaks this week, and then once we've done that, we're going to do what we call an all hands demo, where we bring in everybody from the company together and demonstrate it, and then give those people that are outside the dev team a chance to test the software as well. We were hoping to do that today. We haven't met that deadline, so we'll probably be doing that sometime next week. And then it's going to depend on the feedback that we get from the all hands demo. If there are some bugs identified that we didn't identify during testing, then we'll address those, and then we'll release. So difficult to say exactly, but yeah, it's going to be within the next few weeks. So it's coming soon. We are imminent.
Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. So I think also as well, we've identified some really cool topics for the next few podcasts. Maybe we'll look at some demographics, maybe we'll look at some birth rates. So yeah, thank you for joining me, guys. And I'll see you next week.
Okay, cool. All right. See you guys.
Cheers. Take care.